Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. As you can see, we have a lot of guests here this evening because we're going to be talking about the topic that you all have been talking about all week long, and that's entanglements. But hey, sister, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing just fine. Happy to be entangled with you people here on the show today.
Yes, we are super excited. So, what we want everybody to do, if you're out there, you're tuning in, we want to first of all welcome you to Hey Sister. Thank you for joining us tonight. Please go to this broadcast and share it with a friend or friends of friends. We are streaming live right now on both our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So we want you to like us at both places. Check out this video. And most importantly, we want you to join the conversation in the comments because Hey Sister is our place to have dialogue. It's for sisters, by sisters, and it's about sisters and misters. And we are so excited to have some sisters and misters with us here tonight. So our first guest is Donna Marie. She is the founder of Well Life. Oh Lord, I messed up.
Well-being.
It's the best life well-being.
Best life, well-being, because she's living her best life, and so we want to thank her for being with us tonight. We also have Mr. Leotis Turner. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Financial professional. That's all I can say. Otherwise, I'd have to kill you. And then we also have our expert this evening, our child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, also a fellow Xavierite. You know, I'm always representing for the XU, and that is Dr. Byron Young. Hey, Byron.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is exciting to be a part of.
We are super excited to have you. So we want you all to join us in the comments. We want you to share this video, and we want to just dive right in. So tonight, you know, no need to talk about hot topics because this has been the hottest topic this week. But off top, we want to say this. We still want justice for Breonna Taylor. So yes. Please understand that issue has not gone away, and that all these issues that continue to persist, that we will continue to talk about them and address them. On next week's show, we will have a law enforcement professional on the show so we can have that conversation as well. But we will not let up until we get to a really equality and justice in this society, because that's, I think everybody on here agrees with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, make sure you keep, you know, making action, keep sending letters, keep calling DAs, call the folks down there in Kentucky. Make sure you keep, you know, posting is great too, but also let's stay active and keep the pressure on the politicians and on the folks in office.
Yes, absolutely. And we appreciate that. But tonight, you know, one of the hottest topics this week, it was the most viewed a Facebook watch show ever when one Miss Jada Pinkett Smith went to the red table and took herself to the red table and was joined by her husband, Mr. Will Smith. And she dropped a word on us that an entanglement. And so last week in our hot topics, we talked a little bit about the August Alsina when his video came out. So this was prior to the Red Table Talk. And sister, you know, give the folks a little recap of what we talked about the first time.
Okay. Basically, we just talked about August and having a conversation with Angela Yee and how he presented that he had been in a relationship with Jada Pinkett Smith and that he could die feeling like he had given his all to a relationship. And just, you know, there were questions about, you know, I think everybody at that point had concluded that something had definitely gone on, and we didn't feel like there was any reason for him to be lying or making up the story. But we had a lot of questions about why he would be bringing it up at that particular time. And so we talked about him having a forthcoming album. We talked about, Will having a forthcoming movie, and then ultimately Jada bringing herself to the red table, which we knew would garner a lot of attention. So we, our audience, we love them. We love everybody who participates in Hey Sister with us. But yeah, I definitely had folks who are side-eyeing the whole situation from top to bottom.
Yes. And so once the red table dropped, and so I'm getting a little background interference. So if somebody is listening to it on another device, if you could mute that device, that would be helpful. But once we saw the red table conversation, I started getting text message right away. Are y'all talking about this? When are y'all gonna talk about this? So we're like, we got to pull this together and talk about this. And we have one of our super fans who's watching right now, Jody. Hey, Jody, thank you for tuning in tonight. And so we want to get into it. So we only have Dr. Young with us for a brief part of the of our segment this evening. So we want to start off with him. So also being a New Orleans native, I know that this is definitely a topic that he knows something of, but also probably have in here you've talked a lot about when people are seeking help and you're helping others and all kind of stuff. So I don't know. I'll let you start. Go ahead, Byron. Tell us what you
are you saying because I'm a New Orleans native, I know about people not having somebody on the side? Is that what you're saying?
Well, listen.
And I will sip my tea on that one.
Like the song say, he left home to what?
Put it outside. That's the thing.
He said, "I will leave home to be with my side piece." But he's not necessarily from New Orleans. He's from the Plaquemine area, I guess. Outside.
No, I'm from New Orleans. I'm from the West Bay.
No, I'm talking about the guy who sings the song, Big Pokey, who sings, "I left home to be with my side piece."
Oh, that's
check it out if you don't know it.
For sure. Yeah. What exactly would you like me to talk about? I think so. So we spoke a little bit before the notion that so the question goes like kind of. So what I think is you see Jada kind of going to the red table, doing what she has helped other people do, and kind of bearing her soul. I'm a little disappointed in the kind of the backlash that she got about it. I think her and Will were very vulnerable to do what they did. I think it sounds like from what she said, and again, I've only seen that Red Talk video, and I saw the Angela Yee piece as well. It sounds like her and Will and the whole family, from what they said, really tried to rally around this young brother to kind of help uplift him, provide resources, and try to uplift him, and in the process formed a friendship. I think. So to me, it sounds like they were trying to be helpful. The question was asked, like, was it inappropriate for her to develop a romance, being that she caught him at a vulnerable period? And if she took a particular stance as like his therapist, then that would be really inappropriate. We've spoken about how one of the most inappropriate and all too common things is that therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever, have these situations where they sometimes get in love situations with patients, which is totally inappropriate, totally unethical, and that kind of thing. But we're not sure if that's what happened here. It seems like she just helped him get some resources. So, I don't think there's anything predatory about that necessarily. She, there is an age difference, but he was an adult too. And it sounds like, and I think I spoke about this about the New Orleans perspective. I know the women in my family definitely take this notion of like, so many times people have this tendency to put all of their energy, all of their effort, all of their focus into other people. So the women in my family are quite nurturing in terms of making sure everybody's taken care of, everybody's fed, but to their own detriment, right? And actually, Donna and I talk about this a lot, this notion of, is there something psychologically about I'm kind of too tender to look at my own stuff, so I spend my time looking at other people's stuff so I can fix their stuff so I don't have to focus on my own stuff. And so I think Jada kind of insinuated that that's a thing. She was trying to find some healing and healing someone else and was in her own place in a really hurtful place. So in that way, it's kind of, I think it's sweet, but I think this is a reflection for all of us. What are those ways in our lives in which we are not paying attention to our internal stuff, but getting very invested and putting our energy into other people and uplifting other people at our own detriment? And sometimes it's we know we all have blind spots. It's not easy to see that. But it's something that is all too common, particularly for Black women, I think, to like, there's this pressure to like take care of everybody, and you could talk about the historical reasons why that is, but like it's we talk about how we need to defend Black women, but that in some ways is because Black women have been taking care of us and everybody else, from slavery, taking care of the Black man, taking care of the white folks in the house, taking care of everybody So there's some historical reasons why I think that happens. But I think Jada is just like a lot of women in my family trying to do too much for someone else, at her own detriment. And this is another thing I know y'all teased about Will and her were talking about the entanglement. Maybe y'all can answer this for me. Jada said they were separated. Will agreed that they were separated, but he seemed very upset and kept using words like transgressions, using words like "I'm gonna get you back." Right. But I'm like, if y'all were separated and the entanglement, people are making entanglement seem like it's just like cheating, and that's the attack on Jada. But I think they said it was separation, so I don't understand. Maybe y'all can help me understand that. I don't get it.
Well, that's a very good question, and we have a couple questions here. We'll get to those, but that's a very good point of view that you brought out, because one of the reasons why she's, when she sent her cryptic tweet that healing needs to take place, and that's the premise of having this conversation. Clearly, there's still some healing because you don't use words like "I'm going to get you back" if you healed. Like, I don't know. You're the psychiatrist. You'd have to tell me. But
I think clearly Will was kind of joking, but you could see the look on his face. It wasn't all a joke. There was definitely a lot of pain in that. Right. There are lots of those little freezes of him looking really upset and hurt. And I couldn't understand if he was hurt because now this is public and it's embarrassing, or if he felt like she actually did do him something. And one has to argue that, I think, at least in his unconscious mind, using words like transgressions and stuff, and even the jokes about, I think he was joking. There was something that wasn't right about the situation. And again, she also said, though, and this is something because everybody's getting up on the black woman, but I think she said that there was no need to get me back. Like, we've already, so she insinuated that he had some stuff too.
You've already done that.
Yeah.
Right. So Leona, you took yourself off mute right away when Byron was talking. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go first, and then I'm going to get Christina and Donna.
Sure. So two things real quick. If I may call you Dr. Byron, because I want to give you the respect of your hard work that you've earned. The old saying, there's a lot of truth said in jest. So he's probably joking about it, but there's probably some truthful hurt in there. And then we talk about this word entanglements, because I had to watch the video about an hour and a half ago in preparation of this, because I tend to stay out of celebrity stuff. But the word entanglement and the situation of an entanglement, why are we using that as a new word? Why is it different than a situation, an affair, a distraction? Because you made a valid point, Dr. Byron, about focusing your energy somewhere else or somebody so you don't have to deal with your own. And all that is a distraction. So you don't have to deal with your problems. You don't have to deal with your problems in your marriage. So let me fix this young man over here or this young woman over here for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think it's an all too common thing. And, I think, talking about for the viewers out there, I think we should, because we all do it sometimes. We all have a thing that we kind of self-medicate with, or a thing that we use as a blinder. I just think that this particular type of thing, I've just noticed is quite common, particularly for Black women who have already been tasked to have to take care of everybody. Again, right. And it's not fair. It's definitely not fair. And there's so much, if you could argue about systems of oppression, they face more than anybody, right? Having the kind of intersectionality of racism and misogyny and that kind of thing. So you would think, if anybody was about taking care of themselves, it would be them, but so much is asked of them. I think that's where it comes from. So I guess the reason I say that is because I would expect people to be more compassionate for Jada, but I'm not seeing compassion. I'm seeing a lot of hate and really mean.
I think it's a double standard. It's a societal double standard. Because if it was Will Smith that came out and said, I had an entanglement, then it's like, oh, okay, he's a good looking guy,
Right. That's what men do.
Stand by your man, a la, Hillary Clinton and a slew of others. But was is Jada, well, that's a problem. So.
Well, someone says that here, will we feel comfortable if that was a 23-year-old daughter with Will? And so that is, I think there is that part of that. I have no anger, animosity, because as one of our sorority sisters posted, This is when you were young and your mom and them told you stay out of grown folks' business. That's grown folks' business. Now y'all carry on and do whatever because adults, marriages all have their ups, downs, ebbs, flows, conflicts, trials, tribulations, what have you. They would not be the first couple to have gotten caught up in entanglements, or the last, because y'all know. So man or woman, right? So, sister, what say you? We got a couple of some feedback coming in from the audience.
Yeah, so I wanted to just address what Dr. Byron meant, and well, the question he posed about why Will was upset. Obviously, I don't know these people, so I'm just gonna guess here. But I know one of the things we talked about last week, for example, was about the contractual agreements, right? And we were talking about it in the sense of an NDA, a literal agreement. Mm-hmm. But I think that there is a contractual agreement that takes place amongst people, right, when they decide to engage in these things. And so what I said last week was that I don't believe that August had the same understanding of the contract as Jada and Will, hence the reason he's expressing having this love and this deep emotional connection to Jada. And when I watched Will sit there and talk to his wife, my first thought was, oh, he didn't have the same understanding of the contract either. Because it seemed to me like, again, at the end when he says, I'm going to get you back. And she's like, I don't think we need to do that. You've already gotten me back before. I believe that in his mind, any of the things that he did before, they were inappropriate, but they weren't about relationship. They might have been about sex, but they weren't about relationship. In her mind, it could have been very well the same thing. This is about sex. It's not about relationship. But for whatever reason, and we've heard I've heard DL Hughley talk about this with his wife, and he was like, if my wife cheated on me, it was like he would leave because women are just supposed to be better than men. That's his rationale for it. That women are nurturers and women do these XYZ things. So when a woman cheats, somehow it is deemed more egregious than a man cheating, because men can cheat and it be just about the physical. But the belief is if a woman cheats, then it's about something deeper and more emotional than the physical. And so I think that's why Will was so hurt, because for him, it was like, you broke the social contract. You broke the contract because it was about something more than just physical. But to me, what she was saying was, I didn't feel good and I wanted to feel good.
Let's give kudos to Halle Berry and Monsters Ball. I performance.
What we saw from Will, I think, was this notion of like he was trying to be a vulnerable, appropriate, supportive husband by coming on to the show. And you saw some of maybe the internalized ideas, like you just pointed out, these internalized ideas about this is maybe extra egregious to me as a man, kind of maybe seep through when he said the stuff about transgressions, and kind of maybe seep through when he looked really angry. It was like he knows good and well that double standard is totally inappropriate, but sometimes it's how you feel just because you've already internalized all these very yucky things. And I think it's interesting, right? Because like I was talking about the history. I read this Bell Hooks book called Ain't I a Woman? And she talks about, and this is something I never thought about, but how the Black woman's duties as a woman, like just the notion that all these gender roles are like totally assigned. The Black woman's duties as a woman was to do pretty much everything that Black men had to do as an enslaved person, and also all these things that women had to do that were like deemed as inappropriate for a man to do. So even in this context where we have a group of oppressed people, right, all slaves, Black women already were at a disadvantage where they had to do all this like hard labor stuff as well as this like, delicate, gentle stuff in the house. And so even from the earliest times that you could think of in the American experience where you have Black people, Black women were taking care of everybody, doing all this work, and they still have to have this double standard where they have to be the hardest, strongest, as hard and strong as this person, but also have to be soft and delicate and dainty. And so I just say that to say, I think when you think about the history of Black women in America, it just feels that much more audacious that we would say that we have these ideas around like a Black woman cheating is so much worse than a Black. I mean,
Yeah,
at
I
least
mean, and
yeah.
I mean, we don't, obviously we don't know all the details, but what I will say is I have heard, I happen to have a lot of guy friends, and I try to have deep conversations with them about these kind of things where, if they know a guy who's cheating, they say nothing to their male friends. They don't reprimand them. They don't. It's almost like I even had a friend of mine recently say, not a guy, a woman, but she recently said it's kind of like a rite of passage for men to cheat. Whereas I've heard, men say, but if my woman cheated, it's over off top, and it's like, but you cheat all the time. And she is supposed to come back and forgive and stand by you and understand. And if it is a rite of passage, supposed to bless that rite of passage. So I don't know. I don't know.
Well, let's bring Donna Marie into the conversation, and I want to. So Donna, can you pick up on that whole thing? Because like Dr. Byron said, but both of them said out of their mouths, we were done with each other. And they were on their Father's Day episode, like, yep, you could be over here, I'll be over there, but we're gonna ride or die with each other. We're gonna be here to the end. So they're all kind of thing. But so what do you think about that? I mean, is it cheating? You have said, because the words that Will used on the red table were, "I was done with your ass."
I think that said a lot to me. He was done with her ass. She also kind of said to him, I know. They know what they've been through. Will and Jada have talked about Will being career driven, Jada pretty much being at home, as Byron stated, taking care of everything, taking care of the children. Her mom is a part of their life. I don't know how much of that relationship required her to be a caregiver or support to her mom. She had her own career, which didn't take off probably like she expected. And now she's doing, I remember one interview they had at the Red Table where Will said to Jada, I'm very happy that you're doing something, and in my own words, it's fulfilling and meaningful to you. As if that's something she's been searching for. You lose yourself as a woman sometimes in those marriages that are 20 plus years. You lose yourself when you have the children and you're taking care of the children and you're taking care of the husband, and you don't take care of yourself, as Byron stated. And I really, through some of their interviews, can see where Jada probably lost herself, her own identity as a wife, as a mother, as whatever else in her career. And I can see where she probably experienced some emotional trauma and pain from the way she and her husband maybe interacted with one another, the type of support he provided to her. And even in that last interview, I can see in her expression, I was able to see where, although she made it very clear that there was no shame, but I can see where there was probably some remorse, because she knows what she has put that man through, and he knows what he's put her through. And they've come to terms with that. And I thought that part of it was beautiful. Yes, Will made some comments, but he knows his dirt, and his dirt is still secret,
Yeah, well, we have a lot of comments, and I want to bring them up here so we can kind of chew on them a little bit. So I'm gonna bring up several comments. One says, I think it was very brave of Jada. She admitted her fault in it as well. So I agree. I don't disagree with that. I think anytime you can have an honest conversation about your own shortcomings is a powerful thing. She took advantage of that young man when he was vulnerable. I have some questions about that too, because we know that, when they talked about, we got to talk about those years.
Did she?
It didn't seem like it was that many years. Oh, y'all, okay. See the male perspective. They're like, whatever. It says, Will even made a joke about being in the stand by your spouse position when in that interview. Another comment here says, I feel like we don't know the entire story yet. well, we'll never know the entire story, right? Obviously, because we're not in their shoes. But I think if Will's dirt was discussed, it would paint the entire picture for us. But right now, it's looking like Jada is trying to put sugar on shit. That's all right. I like that. Let's see.
Can I quickly say, I think we're going to get a bunch of people coming out the woodworks being like, oh, I had a thing on the side too. With Will, I had a thing with Jada too. I think it's going to come out. It's going to be interesting.
I think Will got NDAs. I think he got contracts signed. I think he probably got, because he had a lot more to lose professionally. So
exactly,
that's how it works sometimes. I think the look of pain we saw on Will's face was the result of having to revisit an issue that had already been addressed and now being addressed publicly. I definitely agree with that perspective. Let's see. For me, it's their business, and it was very transparent for them to address it because they didn't have to discuss it at all. How many things have gone on in their relationship that they have never addressed? Absolutely. And so none of us need to address our relationship publicly. So what do y'all think about them even addressing it, right? Like, we know August did his interview, so that the rumors had been around for a while. The rumors had been around for years about her having this relationship with this young man. So they could have let it stay that rumor, but he came out and said some things that I don't know. Do you think that they should have even addressed it, or should they have just let it ride and let it stay speculation? Dr. Byron, since you got to leave us, I'm gonna let you go take that one first.
Yeah, I tease with friends about this. There's notion of when you become a celebrity, right, and you're in the public eye, does your business now belong to the streets? Is a thing that I think is a very subjective. I'm not sure. I think people should have the right to their own privacy, but I feel like because of what once August put it out, it was definitely for the streets to consume. And I think it's funny because I'm like, oh well, they did the right thing by coming out to the red table and being vulnerable, particularly because Jada, actually my good friend Chris told me about this notion of like people come to the red table to air out their business, and to like the red table is a place to heal. Yeah, right. And so if Jada wouldn't have come and done that, that would have been a little weird. So she had to come and be vulnerable. I think she did the right thing to do it, because it would have been hypocritical, right, if she wouldn't have, because that's what she does. So I think they did the right thing by getting ahead of it. I think where I'm like really kind of taken aback is the response to them. Like, even when they were vulnerable, even when they gave you what you wanted, right? When they gave us what we wanted. We wanted to hear what Jada had to say. We're still, now on Instagram, they're kind of making a mockery of them. So it's like, well, dang, you can't win. You can't win either way. Kind of. Yeah.
Well, when the comment came up from Jody about she took advantage of that young man, both Leotis and Byron, you kind of made like, y'all did all that little contortion thing there. So let's talk. I want to hear the male side of that, because we know that there is a 20-year age difference. And we also know women mature faster than men. We also know that women are in their sexual peaks in their 40s. So
yes, it's like a very funny joke that God has played on us with that.
Yes. So all of that. So I want to hear from you men first, and then I want to hear from the women on that question. So do you think that this older woman took advantage of this young man who was in a vulnerable position? Because we know that he had been through a lot, and that's why he came to them, and that's why they brought him in to heal him, right?
Right. So here's my take on that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I go back to how we're socialized. We're speaking of the double standards that Chris talked about. And Dr. Byron also alluded to, with the women and Black women in society were from slavery time had to handle all this. So think about high school years when you grow up. The guy, the head football, the stereotypical the quarterback of the football team gets all the girls. That's okay. But his girlfriend has to be pure as the driven snow. She has to be a virgin. Otherwise, she's slut shamed. And there's that whole question. Well, how many guys have you been with? Oh my God, it's 2. Can't deal with you. So it's that part. So addressing the actual question, I go back to the story that happened here in Florida, ironically, the teacher that molested her student. Now, the teacher was very attractive. And if you remember that press conference, the mother got up and talked about how she took advantage and she was upset and da-da-da-da-da, and the woman needed to be thrown under jail. And I don't know if you all remember the father's look on his face, because what I saw was pride. What I saw was like a fist bump to his son, like, way to go, son, you know, whatever. So that's kind of how when you said, did she take advantage of him? I'm like, my thing is, one, you're legal. He's legal. So once you hit 18, you're legally an adult, regardless of your mental state. That's a slippery slope of who took advantage of who. Because obviously she was vulnerable and he was vulnerable. Obviously they had talks or whatever, and whatever the agreement within the marriage or the agreement within that friendship, they knew better. So who took advantage of who? So that's kind of how I look at it. I look at two consensual adults here, period.
Okay. All right. Dr. Young?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. I mean, I do understand that it sounds like August has some serious mental health issues going on, but it also sounds like Jada was saying she had some mental health stuff going on too. So, you know, it sounds like they were both in a weak position. Again, I think as long as Jada wasn't trying to pretend to be his therapist, I don't think she necessarily took advantage of him. And it was two adults, you know, and it sounds like where he was the sickest, it was a family effort to help uplift him. And maybe in the process of him getting uplifted, getting his energy back or whatever, that's when they kind of fell into this thing. I spoke about my lady friend Chris before. We had another conversation about how when a man is under 18 and the woman is older than 18, like you think about this thing with like the teachers, then oftentimes the man is like, it's not as bad, right? Like if it's a man who's under 18, but the teacher's older, it's like, it's not as bad, but people still bad. But when the woman is if it's a woman who's under 18, but an adult male, it's extra gross and extra bad. But it's also weird how when it flips, it's the opposite. So if the dude is over 18, but still young, the woman is like kind of demonizes this cougar, this temptress, this panther, all these words we have. But when the man or the woman is slightly over 18, but the man is older, it's like the old man is a cool dude just trying to get his young tender, you know? So it's just really weird how these things play out in really odd ways like that. But I personally, I think they were all adults. And as long as, it is possible that she took advantage, but I don't think we should assume that. Why would we assume the worst? I think if Jada seems to be, from all intents and purposes, a really loving, very kind, helpful person who was really trying to have his best interest in mind. And it sounds like from what he said, this being the most nurturing, loving situation that he ever had, you know. But I don't think, as a 23, 24, and she, I don't know if she's 40s or 50s or whatever. Like it sounds like,
math on that. How old he was.
It sounds like it was.
We were doing the math, right? And because he's 27-ish now, and she said this was 4.5 years ago, so 22, 23 age frame. But we have a point that's made here. We got a lot of comments that are coming in, so I got to try to keep it. What is his mental development, right? So that mental development is we got like
that's my thing. Why aren't we asking these questions about maybe Jada was extra vulnerable and August took advantage of her vulnerabilities as this woman who was in this broken marriage? Why? And I'm not saying that's the truth. I'm saying, why do we pick a thing that we just assume is the thing that lines up with all of our like preconceived notions that we internalize over misogyny and like anti-blackness and anti-womanness? Why do we pick that thing and be the thing? We should be asking questions on both sides. If you can't make a critique about one side, you can't make a critique about the other side. So we could ask, sure, maybe August got taken advantage of, but maybe Jada got taken advantage of. Let's ask that question too. You feel what I'm saying?
We feel what you're saying. That's why we have you on here, Dr. Byron, because we want to feel what you're saying.
This is one of my things. It seems like people are like, okay, so a thing is a double standard, but that's just the way it is. Let's sit. But you don't have to believe everything. You don't have to believe everything you think, right? Sometimes you'd be like, well, why do I think this? Let's think critically about why these things are things, and like figure out a way to kind of move around and shuffle it and challenge ourselves to be better, to do better. Like the narratives you said about black men being like, if my girl cheats on me, we break it up. But if I cheat on her, it's different. Like I hear you. Like that is something that people say, but that don't mean it's right. That's ridiculous. Like that doesn't make sense at all. Like so, like. We have to challenge these things. And I think we need, because sometimes it's like we can see it when someone else is doing it, like, oh, you could have a double standard. But when we do it, we don't question it. So I challenge everybody out there. We have to, like, if you have a critique for one side, you should also have a critique for the other side, even if it's the side that you just assume is right. Because like she's a Panther and, down with August or whatever. I mean, and August was, doing bad, so she took advantage of him. What if right? We don't really know. So why we assume that it's her down with her and he's all good? Like, dang, right? Like, we got to ask ourselves why we make these assumptions where the black woman is wrong automatically and the black man is, you know. We did this with Chris Brown. Remember, we did that with Chris Brown. Remember how many people were like, what did she do? Like, what? Come on now. Like, why would the first thing you assume be that she had to do something extra bad for Chris Brown to be wild? Now, I understand to have the critique about maybe, but don't just assume like for sure that she had to do something bad. Otherwise, y'all don't know Chris Brown. Y'all ain't never met Chris Brown. All of a sudden, you know, we could vouch for Chris Brown. And again, I'm not trying to, maybe that's the truth, but I'm saying like, why not hold both sides? We don't have to like have an opinion that tries to become a fact. It's all nebulous, but like, let's make the assumptions on both sides. Let's have a critique for both sides. Let's think critically and figure out why, the roots of things. You know what I'm saying?
We got a lot of comments. Listen, I know you have to exit, but Dr. Byron, we have to have you back. And we have to have you back to talk about, because the work that you're doing and talk about healing spaces for Black people, period, Black men and women, getting to self-love, getting to acceptance, kind of overcoming all the history and the historical oppression that you've already outlaid during the conversation, and how it still permeates and impacts our mental health today. So we have to have you back. So y'all clap it up for Dr. Byron. He's
very cool. Let me just say, Black Lives Matter and all Black lives. That's Black women's lives, queer Black lives, trans Black lives. Let's be about it. And remember, don't just post. Let's do something. Let's call the DA down there in Kentucky. Let's get active. We don't just have to post about it. We can do something about it too. We can do both. Let's do both. Well,
Dr. Byron, before you leave, I want to say just really quickly, I think I speak for every Donna, Demetria, Leotis just met you, but I am so proud of you. Obviously, we have known you now for I don't know how many years. I don't want to say 20, but I feel like it might be in that range. From when you were in high school with Malik. When y'all were high school.
And Malik met when they were 11 years old.
Right. And so, I mean, I'm thinking that's over 20 years. And I want to say that I am just incredibly proud of you. And thank you so much. It's been fascinating to watch your growth, and you are a wonderful brother. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate y'all like my second family, you know, through Ms. Donna and Malik. And so always, and anytime I come back, I definitely could. Y'all should definitely get my friend Chris on. I was talking about. She's like a American Studies with a kind of African American lens. Is just super brilliant and teaches me a lot about these things too. So y'all should definitely get her. Donna knows her too. So definitely do that.
Well, listen, I'll be texting you to get her information, because we definitely would love to have that conversation as well.
Cool. And I would love to hear what Malik would have to say about this stuff too. If y'all want to get the theologian and
we be trying to get the theologian on. He don't want to answer my messages. He don't like.
Yeah. Well, can I also plug that book by Bell Hooks, Ain't I a Woman? Just super thought-provoking piece of literature about a lot of these types of things, but particularly the struggles of Black women, and particularly that intersectionality of not feeling supported by other white women, not been supported by Black men, and the people who are supposed to be down for them. You know, they got to be down for everybody, but nobody's down for them. I think it's a really powerful book, and just really makes you put into perspective how powerful and amazing Black women are, despite all those forces coming against them. Yeah, for sure.
We'll have to bring you back when we start the Hey Sister Book Club, because we've been told we need to start a book club because everybody's dropping the books.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. All right, love y'all.
All right,
Take care.
Nice meeting you.
Donna, we wanted to get some of your perspective in there, because I know you were I was coming to you next, and we have a lot of comments that I gotta get up. But so what do you think about that? And I think Byron brought some good perspective about the who took advantage of who was vulnerable. What are your thoughts about that as a woman?
Yeah, I don't think she took advantage of him. I think they were both vulnerable. Just doing a little research on August's life, he was molested as a child. He had two, a stepfather and a father who were crack cocaine addicted. He grew up in New Orleans. Need I say more? He had a tough childhood. And he also had that autoimmune disease. From what I also read, he was introduced to the family through Jaden, Will and Jada's son. So I don't think she took advantage of him. I don't think what happened was expected. I don't think she expected it to happen. As going back to contracts, I think a 23-year-old man involved in this relationship who thought he had permission from the husband, he didn't have the maturity level to think it was just sex. I believe it was a relationship. I believe they had a spiritual connection. I also believe that, also recognize that Jada talked about her addiction. She was addicted to sex when she was younger. She grew up also with a drug addicted mother. She grew up in Baltimore. They have some common, experiences. And so again, I don't think either of them expected, definitely not Jada, expected to be in a relationship with a young man her son brought home to the family for them to help. Her and her husband were separated. She was in pain. This young man was in pain. On one of the other Red Table Talks, she mentioned how he was taking 6 Percocets a day. He was hiding them in his socks. He was addicted to the Percocets. He was addicted to drugs. He talked about his own promiscuity in one of the interviews I saw. So, they were both hurting and they helped one another. When I listened to his interview with Angela Yee, he, I think, through that relationship has grown a whole lot. He claims he still has love for Jada and the whole family. He has no animosity in his heart. He did say that breakup was the toughest thing he thinks he'll ever experience in life. And I hope that's the truth, because if you think about it, if that's the worst thing you experience in life, that you're doing pretty good.
And he's a Katrina survivor. So I'm like, really?
Yeah. But but I think the breakup was after he lost his sister to cancer. And so it was a lot of grief, a lot of pain he was experiencing also after that breakup. But no, I don't think she took advantage of him. Not at all.
Okay. Well, let me get into some of these comments. We got one that says they ain't no healers. And that boy knew what he was doing and he enjoyed it and he began to love her deeply. And that's when it went sideways. We have another comment here that says legal doesn't mean mature. Will we have the same conversation if the roles were reversed? And then that was the follow-up about what is his mental development. We showed this about Panther. That was funny. Right. He probably thought they were done talking about Will and Jada. And when Will and Jada got back together, that probably that hurt was formed. They built a bond through trauma, period, a moment of codependency. Also, I think we had to consider who had the Hollywood power in this position, because we talk about power dynamic in relationships. That would be another one. I just like using entanglement with everything now. I just had an entanglement with my margarita. It was so delicious. Okay, I cracked myself up. It's COVID. Honey, we got to do it. We had some things for Dr. Young. Reminds me of the Jill Scott situation. Oh, hon, you gonna have to say the Jill Scott situation. That's another situation that's been percolating back in the news. You got to tell us more, or drop the link in the comments. My husband says, hi, everyone. Hey, husband. And then our other good friend says, my husband said they all grown. So like grown folks do.
I think August is even more grown now. He had a real experience.
Oh, yeah.
But let's talk about that. About being grown. What does that mean? When you talk about these types of situations, because relationships have ebbs and flows. They have ups and downs. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the end of that relationship, right? Couples go through things where they are having struggles, right? So can grown people have entanglements, but then come back and repair their relationship? Who wants to take that first?
Well, I'm going to jump in because I have been wanting to say a lot of stuff since you asked the question about did they need to address this? So I'm going all the way back then.
Go all the way back. Take it back, sister.
I think, if they were Will and Jada Smith in Milwaukee, who no one had ever heard of, they possibly would not have to have addressed this. We wouldn't be talking about it.
We wouldn't care.
We wouldn't care. They are Will and Jada Pinkett Smith, the Smiths of Hollywood, who have made a career on attention. And the fact of the matter is, when entertainment is your business becomes everybody else's business. And that's the unfortunate piece. You kind of lose that level of privacy. Should August have talked about it? Maybe not. I think he said very candidly that he needed to speak his truth. So I don't know what he was physically going through. And when I say physically, like what pain was being manifested in his body such that he felt the need to bring it out at this time. But he brought it out. It's out in the public domain. And people do have the right to discuss it. Where I have gotten frustrated a little bit. I'm all for jokes. I'm all for memes. But some of it is a little mean-spirited. Mm-hmm. And I think as somebody who is not married and has never been married, I think, I was happy, proud of them for being vulnerable and sharing this very intimate situation with the rest of us through their red table talk. And I think, as Dr. Byron said, it would have been seen as hypocritical if she brings other people to the red table and they talk and bare their soul and she did not do the same. But I think that sometimes for those of us who've never been married, in this social media world that we live in, we're all about portraying everything as being perfect. Mm-hmm. We look at people's pictures. Oh, they have these beautiful family portraits, or they're on the beach, and everything always looks so perfect. And so it's very hard. Like, I can appreciate somebody saying, damn, stuff ain't always as clean cut as it appears. Because, look at, they're beautiful people. They're multimillionaires. Their kids like, hey, we don't need to go to school. And look how successful we are anyway. And so often it feels like we are running after these false images of what marriage and relationship is really about. Mm-hmm. And I think that I can appreciate them being honest and being vulnerable. Now, you ask about what does it mean to be grown. One of the things, so I actually wrote some of Jada's quotes down because they struck me hard. The one thing when she said, you can't find happiness outside of yourself. I think that's something that you don't realize that until you're quote unquote grown. Very often it's the material. I just had this conversation even with my parents this morning. Like, sometimes I'm like, what is all this for? So you get a house, you get a car, you got the job, you put some money in the bank, but you still feel this level of disconnect and unhappiness because you're trying to make it about these outside entities when it's really about what's on the inside. So that struck me. The other thing that she said was, it was really a joy to help. It was really a joy to help heal somebody. And, Dr. Byron talked about that quite a bit. She alluded to the codependency, and she said, which is another thing that I had to learn to break in that cycle, needing to fix and being drawn to people that need help. There's something about that childhood trauma that feels as though it can be fixed through fixing people versus fixing me. Mm-hmm. And that hit me really hard because I think so often we have broken people going into relationships mm-hmm. and trying to fix each other and not fixing themselves. And then you end up with entanglements that, if we're going to tell the truth, I'll tell y'all honestly, Donna and Leotis, I give y'all all the kudos for coming on this show and having this conversation with us. Because when we reached out to other people, they were like, no, we'll pass. And I think because there's a fear that you may be
called to the red table.
Yes. You may be, and but instead of having that fear, it's like, yo, all of us are dealing, if we're Black in America, we dealing with childhood trauma that has become adolescent trauma, that has become adult trauma. And again, broken people going into relationships together, marrying each other, even when you have money, even when you have success, even when you have all the outward appearances of things being good, they're not. And so entanglements happen more often than people want to give credit and credence to. And that's what trips me up, is like folks are making a lot of jokes and pointing a lot of fingers. Like some of the jokes are funny. Like, I don't get me wrong, I'm not a prude, and I'm like not like, oh, that ain't funny. Some of it is real funny, but some of it, I'm like, it's kind of like what Betty Wright said in her song about the man coming home with the gifts because making up for the guilt trip from the night before. It's like, are you pointing at somebody else's shit so that nobody can look at yours? Like sometimes that rubs me the wrong way. But that said, I think what makes you grown again is when you start having these revelations about life, that perfection never happens. The happiness, you're not going to find it outside of yourself. Marriage, like you and my brother-in-law have been beautiful in saying marriage is not that hard, but I got to tell you, 9 out of 10 other folks tell me it is.
The statistics tell you that too.
Right, and then the statistics suggest that it is much more challenging than people like to admit. So,
well, your brother-in-law has several comments.
I see.
So I got to bring them up on there. But yes, we do say it's not that hard. So
let me just say this: trial by fire is what makes you grow.
Yeah. Yeah. What? Say that again.
I said trial by fire is what makes you grow.
Thank you. I wanted you to say it again because we need to hear that. When the two individuals are not on equal footing, you will always have issues. Married folks messing with a single person is a recipe for disaster. Separated person messing with a single person will be an issue. And then Jeff says, no, he should have kept his mouth shut. For someone who states he loves the family, you may want to use discretion and discernment as it applied to the ones you love. Then they are actors, yes.
That part.
Let's see. Okay, so this was, let me clarify, when he brought up the book.
Okay, yes, that's what we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
So the guy, I don't know if my sister's frozen there.
Looks like she's frozen.
Yeah, so there was a former NFL player. I'm gonna say former because I guess he used to play for the Cowboys, which is probably a problem in and of itself. I'm a Saints fan, so I know my brother-in-law is like, but whatever. So there was a young man who used to be a former Cowboy player who made a comment sort of like, are people still attracted to Jill Scott? And like question mark, exclamation, question mark. And so that's the thing. Obviously, he's gotten a lesson in not only are they attracted to her, but you're not coming for her in the year of our Lord 2020, when we don't even know who you are. And I can't honestly call his name because I don't remember. It's Kyle, somebody. But that's the thing. So I wanted to say about alluding to what Tita was saying. He came out and made those comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you can probably have a show for 2, 3, 4 hours, just literally ad nauseum on this topic, because there was a lot of things that you said that I'll very quickly address because I know you're running at the top of the hour.
We can go a little over as long as the people are still here with us.
People are dropping comments after comment.
That works for me because I can talk about this for a long time and I have talked about this at work a lot with friends and even all through my history of marriage and even before then. Because I always
been married. Can you tell the people how long you've been married?
21 years, 9 months, 22 days, 20, will be 22 years in September.
Okay. Good.
So a long time with who's watching the show, Dr. Claudine McLaren Turner. So I'll give her a quick shout out. So one, I always preface my comments about any relationship, especially with marriage, and just the how we are socialized with men and women in this society, with my foundation of I don't like the double standard. That's been my point. And I've repeated that throughout this whole conversation. So addressing your question and a couple of comments that you made, Chris, was one about the marriage and fairy tales, and people look at marriage with the false hopes of what it should be versus what it really is. There's a kind of a running joke that me and Claudine have had for multiple years, and it really started, kind of as a joke, but it ended up being real. I think we were maybe 5 years in, we were still getting to know each other. Those of you who know how we met and how quickly it happened, that's a topic for another day. But our friends, I would have some friends come to me and ask, should they get married? And my answer was always this. Do you love her? Yes, no. Does she love you? Yes, no. Do you think this person's good for you? Then go for it. And I would tell them that, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with marriage. Then that kind of meandered into, we would be at parties, not unlike your annual Labor Day bash, where somebody would get married, and I would be in the conversation usually by myself with a bunch of women, and I would say, don't get married. And they, I'd always get that look, well, wait a minute, aren't you married? Yeah, don't ever get married. I'm going to tell your wife, and would immediately go over to Claudine and was like, you know what your husband said about marriage? And she will say, don't get married. And that started a conversation. And the reason why we say that is because of what Chris said. People have this view of what marriage is supposed to be. It's a fairy tale. Oh, you have this, you take all these pictures and this beautiful wedding. There's doves, there's flowers. Oh, it's perfect, right? No, it's not. It's work. And if you're not willing to work, if you're not willing to realize that the person you married is not perfect, going to make bad decisions, may get caught up in entanglements, may snore, may have bad breath, whatever. If you can't deal with that, don't get married, because we like to talk about the vows, for better, for worse, for this and that, for rich or poor. But how many really, really abide by that? And then I go back to the double standard of men. Woman cheats on her husband, she has to go. Well, why? Why is it a double standard? So then, to your other question of what's grown, and I agree. I believe grown is a thing of, if you can make a mistake, own your mistake, and live with the consequences and not make excuses, to me, that makes you grown. So the fact that they got into this situation, the fact that he says, yes, it was this, and she came out on public media and said, we did this, to me, that makes them grown in that facade. But I think I forgot who made the comment. Remember that they are all actors. And I was listening to a song by what's the song? Kanye West is in it, but either way, it brings up the point. He speaks in this song the fact that his wife became the person she is because of a sex tape. So I think that needs to be kind of sprinkled into this whole conversation of, was she really being vulnerable? Was he being vulnerable? Or is this all a setup to next year this movie comes out with Jada Pinkett as the woman in the movie's called Vulnerable? So I think that needs to be thrown in there as a consideration.
Clearly, the movie would be called Entanglement.
Or that thing. I'm sorry. You're in California. That's your thing. That's not, I'm a conceptual person, not a title person. So, but I think that's something to think about in this context, because to me, I thought it was refreshing that they did it, but I have to look kind of behind the curtains, like, okay, is this really, are they really being vulnerable? Did he really put it out there? You know, just like you said, Demetria, if he really loved this family, would he put it out there? Or was this all a, hey, let's have a conversation and all of us are going to benefit from this? I don't know. Not for me to judge. Don't really care.
Someone is very skeptical.
Well, I've learned that everything is not what it seems in life, and I've had to come a long way. And I'll end on this. One, I'll say I'm not too unlike Jada in that I'm a fixer too. That's me. That's when I see people where I'll talk to people. That's what I do. That's my nature. So I can understand if you bring somebody that close and you have, oh, you were molested. I was molested too. Oh, you had a crack addicted mother. So did I. And the next thing you know, boom, couple margaritas, as your viewer said, a couple entanglements later, then boom, there you go. But I'll end on this. There's a very famous entangled couple that we never want to talk about, especially in the Black community. So I'll do it. And if I get shunned, so be it. We never want to talk about Martin Luther King and Coretta. Never want to talk about it. Because you talking about an entanglement, we're talking about knots, not just entanglement.
I knew you were gonna go there.
Knots. We don't want to talk about it. We don't ever want to talk about it. Because you know he's this and he's got a holiday. Leotis can't get entangled, get a holiday. Probably won't even get a greeting card. So, and I'll end with
we got another one who's in prison right now, and his wife's still with him, and they've been entangled for 40, maybe 50 years.
Who's that? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yellow Pop, anyone? We got some comments here. Let me say.
There you
go. I can testify to that. 2 people wounded trying to relate. Wow, I can look back now and be like, dang, glad I have transformed more than not. So no, my marriage wasn't easy. Yet no, why more than not? So that's very, sometimes it's not easy because you bring in what you bring into the table. Let's see. Marriage is not that hard if you prioritize your love and relationship above everything else. But if you prioritize yourself and your own interests over your love and relationships, marriage and every other interdependent. So let's see. We got so many comments. Relationship is beyond difficult.
I feel like I'm not going to get sleep tonight.
Let's see. Marriage is hard even if you love your partner's dirty drawers, because we're not perfect specimens. We have attitudes, difference of opinions, raising children in the midst and nosy family, but I absolutely love marriage. Lots of entanglement, exactly, a lot of give and take. We had someone agreeing with you, Leotis. Someone dropped in a link. We have to look at it.
It's a picture someone has already made, entanglement movie. Yeah.
Well, we
don't be surprised if you see it. Don't be surprised.
Well, we will. Yeah, I think I saw that Entanglement movie, a Tyler Perry movie. I think I saw that one.
Do you all know that August has not just keeps dropping, or he just dropped his CD and a documentary?
Boom. Yeah. Let's see how well it sells.
I didn't know who he was prior to all of this. As I stated earlier, I wonder how many more followers he has. Mm-hmm. Will and Jada are actors, but he's a performer as well. Mm-hmm. And he also stated in his interview with Angela Lee that the rumors, I don't know how, but affected his bottom line, affected his credibility. And so in his opinion, it was better for him through his documentary to talk about his life, and that was part of his journey and part of his healing. And so,
I think what I got from it is that he was trying to allude to the fact that because of the rumors and Mr. Will Smith being the power player in Hollywood, some of the things that he was trying to do were getting shut down. So again, that goes back to when I was saying about the contracts, not literal contracts, but the social contract, what we all thought we agreed to. Because again, like you said, Donna, in his mind, he thought he sat down and had a conversation with Will Smith and agreed to, I'm gonna sleep with your wife. You good? Okay, we good, kind of thing. And clearly that wasn't. And as Jada said, the only person who would give that kind of permission would have been her in the first place. So,
yeah. He also alluded to the fact that they kind of not just, they kind of lived together. Like he was there with her on a daily, regular basis. So I totally understand him getting that all confused and thinking it was going somewhere and not considering the age difference and the fact that she was still married and still had a family, and you're still, you were introduced through her son.
But again, she did say Will can be on his side of the house with who he's with. I will be on my side of the house with who I'm with, and we are still in this. And so, as we know, she talks, the language that was used was, I mean, even at this thing, there's like, we, live together, die together, bad marriage for life. Like, it was very evident that how they define marriage is not how a lot of people, and we can get it, this would be another conversation, but how a lot of people of religious faith want to believe that marriage is confined to a certain box, which means forever and ever till death do us part. And I think in so many ways, that's also why a lot of people struggle, because we have either people who want to pretend everything is perfect and never talk about anything, or people who are on the other end of that spectrum, like I said, who give up at the first sign of
trouble.
Yeah.
Chris, I saw, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, we got another comment here for Jeffrey Sloan. He says, I'm a believer in the law of attraction. Believing that a marriage is going to automatically be hard will lead to bad things to happen. Even the small things will be seen as deal breakers. Recognize that things will happen, but deal with immediately so it doesn't fester and create unnecessary hardships. He also says maybe Og was shut down because he wasn't as talented as he thought.
No, Jeffrey Sloan ain't about to give August Alsina any wiggle room.
No wiggle room. Tina said that part, right. And they full of ish. I'm so glad I ain't a celebrity with my stuff out there. Oh yeah, they marriage a contract. Yeah, it may be. I think
marriage is a contract.
That's all marriage is. Marriage actually was a contract designed because of patriarchy, because women could not own property. So I mean, we gonna really go back to how marriage started. I mean, it was to procreate and to to serve that man. So, and because women couldn't own property and what have you, they couldn't inherit the earth. So
they had no rights as human beings.
That's right. Exactly. And so then add to what Byron said earlier, being a Black woman on top of that. Ooh, child, now that's a whole, we're going to have a whole historical analysis of marriage one day. That'll be a great show. Let's go ahead and go around and get some closing remarks from everybody. Want to start with you, Donna. Thank you for joining us and bringing so much to the conversation. So the title I put out tonight was, entanglements. How do we get into them? And then how do we detangle? So, any advice on detangling? Because I do think that healing is necessary. Hurt people do hurt people, and vulnerable people shouldn't be trying to lead other vulnerable people, right? We all have to get our own healing first. And I think if you have your own healing, you less likely to get entangled and won't need to get detangled. But I don't know. What you say, Donna?
I will leave you with a few quotes. And first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's my honor and pleasure to be here tonight. Leave you with a few comments from August and and so first of all, as we go through our journey, we're going to all have entanglements. Like, it's just a part of the human condition. We're going to live and learn. But he says you only have the capacity for what you have the capacity for. People can only meet you where they are themselves. And he talked about pain can be a gift. And so struggle and pain can definitely be a gift. And in order to get through that, you face it with courage. As I listened to his interview with Angela Lee, I think I told you earlier, I'm in love with him. He's a humble, sweet young man who seems to be very enlightened. And I think part of that is because of the painful relationship he had to endure with Jada and all of the other painful relationships that he's endured in his life. He talked about his relationship with his mom and not having any support in his family. And all of that has brought him to this place. And again, I think he is a very enlightened brother. And though I'm not going to follow him, I wish him well. And I wish that we can all, show grace to people who get caught up, because it happens.
Yes. I'm so see. All I've been thinking about all weekend is all the Usher songs. Like, you just dropped me another one. I'm so caught up. That's August. But Jada was saying these are my no. Will told Jada, if you're gonna tell it, you better tell it all, because you ain't gonna have me talk entanglement. Why don't you just say what it is, girl?
Right.
Anyway, all of those Usher. Well, that's a whole nother conversation. Leotis, what you got to say in close?
That album came out of pain. So pain being a gift, how many of the songs that we listen to come out of something like that? So God, we could, that again, another topic. But in closing, a couple things I'll say. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I have the benefit of my life travels, growing up in the very religious and structured home that I did, father being an ordained minister, and then my mother, North Carolina, and grandfather started a church. So that whole history, to going through college and seeing, whole different spectrums, to now I know several couples, actually. One couple that they are in a open relationship, been together for, I want to say 25, maybe close to 30 years, open relationship, and are totally devoted to each other, in the context of their marriage and what they define. I have another friend who just started a poly relationship, and I've had conversations with her where, and even over the years, where there were issues with her marriage, and I've had, some hard conversations with her. It's like, well, wait a minute, why are you mad that your husband's doing this when you're doing this? And relationships in general are complex. And what I'm saying by that is, people within their marriage, we judge looking out. Whatever they do in their marriage is their business, whether it is an agreed upon contract where all parties know what's expected or is not. Because I respect the open relationship just as much as I respect the ones that are, the very religious, like pastor with his wife and, whatever, strictly Bible rules. And because that's you all. Because I saw a meme in a group chat friend of mine posted this week, and it said, I quote, "Some of y'all are in open relationships and just don't know it." And that was powerful because, going back to the Martin Luther King thing, I think Loretta knows, but within my own family, and I had this conversation with my father.
Hey, hold on.
I'm sorry.
Loretta or Coretta?
I'm sorry, Coretta. I'm
sorry.
I'm mixing. Who am I talking about?
Loretta.
Loretta was the other, was a side chick. But my father told me this, and I'll end with this. My father told me about the pain growing up in his house. My father's siblings, and by siblings I mean from his mother and his father, he had 5 other siblings. I remember going to an event, it may have been a funeral, and me meeting an uncle, my father meeting his brother for the first time, and I was probably 30. And then he told me about this story. It's like I had an uncle named Uncle Billy, just like my kids call your husband Uncle Jeff, and whatever. And I thought it was just a friend of the family. Come to find out, oh wow, you're blood. Why am I just knowing this? But he told me about that. It's like that relationship, whatever it was then. I know those times were different, but the agreement was between grandma and granddaddy, it worked for them. It was their business. Some women's like, no, I'm not putting up with this. So I think at the end of the day, we need to just look within ourselves, like, what will I tolerate? And then stick to that. Jada and Will and Tom and Loretta will handle them. We need to look within ourselves. And like I think Donna said, we need to fix ourselves for if you're in a relationship, fix yourself so you can make your relationship better. If you're not, fix yourself. If you choose to go into one, you can be in a productive one.
All right. Thank you very much. Sister, closing remarks.
Yeah, so first I want to say again, thank you, Leotis and Donna, for being here, because I know that when we reached out to people and like, hey, we want you to come on and talk about entanglements, they were like, no. So I thank you all so much for being
had
here.
a lot of comments that they was posting about.
So I am just gonna say, because my sister can get out of pocket real quick. No, I thank you all very much for being here, and I think this is a great discussion. And I will say that with regard to Jada and Will, as has already been said, look, we don't know what all goes on in their house. We don't know what was agreed to, what wasn't, and who had what understanding of what the agreement was. What I do think that we can say is, again, while I don't, to Jeff's point, life and death lies in the power of the tongue. So I try to be very careful about saying that marriage is hard. What I will say is marriage is, it will always have it is complex because we are complex beings, right? We bring to the table our pain, our insecurity, our feelings of self-worth or lack thereof. We bring childhood trauma. We bring what we saw in our lifetime growing up about what marriage was. Leotis alluded to, the pastors. Well, the truth of the matter is, it's been some pastors that have had two separate families and two separate churches on both sides of town. We talk about things that happened back then, and a lot of times we hear these stories like, well, grandmama them, that was different because that was a time back then. No, this has been happening since the beginning of time.
Exactly.
And nothing is new under the sun. What I will say is, I hope that this entire conversation, for those who are married, it has allowed and opened the door for people to have honest discourse about what is going on in their relationship. And for those of us who are not married, I hope that this opens the door to say, listen, what are our deal breakers? What does a fruitful, prosperous marriage look like? Because I got to tell y'all, I have had conversations with my girls, honestly, and I'll be like, yo, like when we talk about these vows, man, I'm like, are we setting people up for failure off top, talking about some for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part? Like, are we really setting people up for failure? Or should I just go up there and be like, yo, bro, we gonna love each other hard as long as we can. And you know what? And we're gonna ride it till the wheels fall off. But if the wheels fall off, it's okay. But I think so many people are holding on to these false images of what marriage and relationship are. And that's why when they look at somebody like Will and Jada, or even Beyonce and Jay-Z, or Dr. King and Coretta Scott King, all of these people have dealt with infidelity. And we know about it because it was made public. But just as they've dealt with it, many of our friends and family members have dealt with it. That's why we have play cousins and aunties and uncles that we were like, yo, are we real blood relatives, or how are we related? So this thing has been happening for a long time. We have the luxury of picking apart maybe somebody else's situation, but really and truly, we should use this as an opportunity to have some honest discourse in our own lives.
Woo! Well, I will say this in closing. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight to Hey Sister. This was a wonderful conversation. Leotis, Donna, and also Dr. Byron, thank you for being our guest. I do love this. No, I don't think marriage is hard, but all of these conversations we had before we got married. Right. So if you're contemplating marriage, if you're contemplating any type of intimate relationship, if you cannot have the honest discourse, then you should not be getting in relationship with anyone else. If you cannot have honest discourse with yourself about your wants, needs, desires, fears, shortcomings, failings, strengths. If you can't have an honest, introspective conversation with yourself about all those parts of your being and not being willing to have them with someone else, then you should not be in relationship, because that's what makes it hard. That's what really makes it hard. But if you're willing to bear it all and have that type of go that deep with someone, then it's not that hard. And that's been my experience. 23 years with this dude and 20 years married to this dude, and he's a good dude. I like him, he liked me. But you have to be honest. Otherwise that's where feelings get hurt. So with that being said, I know we got some more comments coming in. Please like, follow, share, join the Hey Sister page. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us here on Facebook. We got a lot of comments. People really enjoyed the conversation. And so with that being said, we're signing off for the night. Leotis and Donna, hold the line.
Thank you.
Everybody else, good night.
Good night. Thank you all.